Good morning, everyone. I'm doing my next section of my John Maxwell, and if you can hear some background noise, it's just because they are doing some repairs on the road. It's not that loud, so it's tolerable, and I'm happy they're doing it. Today, I'm moving on to the next section in here, and the last section that I covered was on looking at bringing the law to life, that how we can set our priorities. And today I'm starting a new chapter, and this one is on the law of sacrifice. So we're looking at how do we sacrifice. Basically, the thought for today is there is no success without sacrifice, and we have to look at what we give up in order to go up, whether that's in our careers, or we're learning a new skill, or we're doing something different. We're always giving something up in order to get to the next level. It's like when you go to school. When you are in junior school, you give up your friends, you give up your school maybe to go to the next school, to go to the next level. You give up your time to learn new skills. You give up maybe certain activities in order to sacrifice to get your degrees, your qualifications. So every leader is always giving up something in order to get to the next level. And John Maxwell gives some powerful examples that are from the Bible. He's focusing on the men, but you can focus on the women as well. So he talks about Abraham, where he was called to go to a land that he'd never been to before. And for us as refugees or professional skilled workers, it's the same. When we go to a new country, we don't really know what to expect. If we are fortunate, we already have friends there, we have family there, we have welcoming faces, people that are going to make some time for us. But many people don't have that. When I went to study in South Africa, I didn't know anybody there. And so I basically landed. Some strangers picked me up at the airport. They knew my uncle's family, but not me. And the arrangements were made through the Kwekwe community just for them to pick me up and drop me off at Wits. And that's what they did. And from there, I had to make it on my own. I had to learn to get to know the campus. I had to learn my responsibilities. I had to learn where my classes were taking place. And so I gave up a lot to go to university. I worked and studied in South Africa. And it was an unknown land for me. It was very different from Zimbabwe. The crime was higher. And even working on campus at night, you had to be safe. You had to have a security guard. It was very, very different from the Zimbabwe that I came from. But I made my way, and I got to know people, I got to know things, and I landed up really loving the country. So we too, are like Abraham, we're called to different places and different countries. And then Joseph. So imagine being Joseph. He had to give up his comforts of life, and he had to become a slave and accept what was done to him to save his life, and also so that later leadership roles could be taken on by him. But he also had to have faith. He had to trust in God, that God would not leave him in those desperate circumstances forever. And there are many people who die in slavery. They die in war-torn countries. They die in places where they don't even have the basics available. So we have to keep our hope that things can change and that things will change for us. The next example that he gives is Nehemiah, who had gone to the opposition to see the king, and how he faced opposition all along his journey. And that's true of us as women and men. We face opposition on our journeys, on our paths in life, but we have to persevere and we have to not give up. And the last example that he gives is Paul. Paul, the one who persecuted the church, the one who used to take people into jail, Paul was the one that people feared, and he became one of the founders of the Christian community. So imagine he had gotten, when he took on his ministry, he was beaten, he was shipwrecked, he was basically treated like a slave. And he never gave up his cause, he never gave up his faith once he made that commitment. So it's true for us, we all go through different kinds of persecutions, different kinds of trials in life, and we have to choose whether we want to give up that faith or not. It's not as easy as it sounds. It might be easier to not go to church to get those good paying jobs. It might be easier to say, yeah, who wants to belong to a church like this that's full of warts and full of, there's evil that's happened in the church. But we go to church because we believe in Christ and because we want to follow the teachings that will help us to stay close to Him and to grow in our faith. So you could look at that, if you want to look at the women of the Bible, you can look at Jesus's mother, Mother Mary, and how she accepted saying yes to God's plan for her life, and how she went to stay with her cousin Elizabeth while she was pregnant to help her to be with her. She gave up her freedom so that she could be with her cousin. You can look at the women that accompanied Jesus, the women that made their homes open to Jesus so that he had a place to stay on his travels. The women that were serving Jesus, they were part of hospitality, whether it was on his travels where he went to visit Mary and Martha, or whether they gave up their time by sitting at his feet or sitting with him and listening to him. And some women were even leaders in the temple, and they're named Priscilla and Aquila. So there's different women leaders that we can look at as well. And the women gave out of their own resources, so they provided for Jesus. And so we too, we provide for our communities, our families, our churches. Sometimes it's not material things, sometimes it's our prayers. Sometimes it's being present at Mass. Other times it's like today, we can fast for America because of this Hurricane Helene that's taking place. Even if we can't give money, we can pray for them, we can fast. So there's different things that we can give up, and through that fasting, through that discipline, through offering those prayers, we are coming closer to God. So there's different ways that you can apply that in your faith life. You can apply it in your business communities, because it's easier to stay at one level. Like with me, I've had so many different jobs that I've had to do. It wasn't like I became an executive assistant. I came here as an executive assistant and I could stay in that job. I had to take on whatever work was available, and some of it I didn't like and I didn't enjoy. But as things change, as business needs changed, I had to change. And I had to take the skills that I had as an executive assistant and use them in project management, because the skills are very similar. I'm still going to meetings, taking down action items, tracking things, organizing events, chairing the meetings, except my title was not executive assistant. My title was project coordinator, or my title was project administrator. So I had to give up some of those jobs that I had. I didn't do travel arranging anymore. I didn't do some of the skills that I used were not used in the project work, but there were other things that I took with me. And it's the same thing as when I worked in the hospitals. It's very different working in a bank compared to working in a hospital. But I didn't have a choice, so I had to leave the bank and go work in the hospital. And there was a transition that happened for me there, because the terminology in banking, the words we use, the language we use is very different to working in a hospital. I had to learn a whole new vocabulary. And it's the same thing when I went from the hospital environment to working in customer service and working with the Americans compared to the Canadian public. I had to learn a new vocabulary. Some of them, like when some of the business that I worked with, I found it very childish, because there were some things that we had to do, like instead of saying okay in the chat, we had to say K. And they use all these short forms. So it's very different when you're coming from a European background where everything has to be proper and you have to say please and thank you. And I worked like that with the executives in banking, and then you go to work in customer service where you have to be more casual, you have to be more friendly, and so completely different skills and mindset. But again, I had to give that up, what I liked and what I was comfortable with, in order to earn a living. So that's how you can take this and you can apply this in sacrifice, and how you have to give up in order to take on new responsibilities and get to different levels. And you can see that if you watch the movie The Prince of Egypt, that's a very good representation of going from being a prince to being a slave to being a head of a household to freeing people from slavery. You can see that, and it's a very well done movie. It was in fact recommended to us when I was taking my theology courses by Father Kalachi. So if you want to watch that, you can watch that movie. It's very good. And to always stay humble before God, because ultimately we're not in control. You can see it today with Hurricane Helene. You can see it with the floods we've had in Toronto. There are acts of God that happen that we can't control. So we have to always stay humble before Him. But our leadership always has a cost, whether it's volunteering in the church or whether it's volunteering with something like the One campaign or helping out with Out of the Cold. There's always a cost. There'll always be people who will criticize it and people who will say, oh, you think you're better than other people, or there'll always be that. So we always have to accept that cost. Even with education, people might think, oh yeah, look at all that education and what are you doing with it? But if we're using our education in our communities, in our parishes, in our workplaces, then the education is not wasted. But some of us don't get to earn what we should be earning if you compare what we earn in minimum wage compared to people who are in other positions and they're earning 70,000, 80,000 a year. But unfortunately, until we can get that break, we have to keep going and we have to keep applying. I apply for HR manager roles, HR director roles, VP of HR, executive assistant. I still apply for all those jobs. And until I can get that break and earn that kind of money that I want to earn, that's what I have to do. And in the meantime, unfortunately, the people who are helping me, my family, extended family, they don't mind doing it. But like I've been told, I shouldn't sponge off people. Unfortunately, the circumstances of my life have put me in a situation where I really don't have a choice. So I'm going to persevere and keep applying. And also with online applications, it can be hard because if you on your phone and you select the wrong option, there's sometimes no way to go back and check that. So anyway, we have to just persevere and we have to be willing to sacrifice as women to do what we need to do. And I like the women's stories in the Bible because you have different leadership roles available. You can look at hospitality, you can look at being with family or being with friends. You can look at education when you look at the women who were in the church and serving in the Jewish temples. You can look at women who had strength to stand by the cross when everybody else fled. And you can look at women having courage to go back and to tell the disciples that Jesus is risen, and to risk being called delusional or crazy or, everything else under the sun. So we have strong women leaders in our Bible, and we have strong women leaders that are part of our faith journeys. We can look at those and we can try to be those kinds of people for our communities. And eventually, hopefully, we get to the place where people know us, like us, and trust us. And when we can walk into a place and say, yeah, this is somebody, she's here. We can hopefully get to that place. But it takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of effort. And if we enjoy it along the way, that helps as well. So the leadership question for today is, are you willing to sacrifice to succeed? And again, it depends what success looks like to you and what you want. For me, success is not earning minimum wage, and it's not where I am at right now. Yes, I have accomplishments with my education. I've studied hard, I've worked hard. But for me, and when I'm earning that 100,000 a year, when I have my own property, when I'm traveling first class, to me that will be success. Even owning my own jet, that will be success. This is not success to me, because success also has to include a financial component for me. And being able to go to family gatherings, being able to send gifts. I used to, when I had a good paid job, I used to send gifts for Christmas to my aunt and uncle and my cousins in America. I used to send gifts to family and friends. But if I don't have the income to do that, then it gets very hard. And people have told me, don't bother sending gifts anymore. We have more than enough. We don't need anything. Sometimes I still do. I'll send my godmother a plant or flowers or something, and my mother. But other than that, I don't really do anything. And I do my shopping at the dollar store, because that's where I can save some money. And I mean, it's not an embarrassment to me, because if they have good products and I can buy them there, I can go there and I can buy them there. So that's how you can also think about sacrifice and giving up things to go up. And of course, I want a car. I don't want to be taking public transit and continuing to, when I get to a place, having to ask people, oh, can you come pick me up? I'm here now. I mean, we had cars in Zimbabwe. The family bought cars. So, for me, I've done the worst out of everybody in my family financially. So that's my goal and that's my aim. And also prayer. We can give up our time to make time to pray for people, to pray for our communities. That's also giving up something, and it's putting us closer to God. So I hope that helps you. And I'm almost done with this book. I just have a few more chapters to go, but then I'll go on and I'll read something else. And I hope that everybody that's benefiting from it will think of me if jobs come up in their companies, or they know people looking for a speaker, because I can help others, and I also want to be able to earn my own living and to make the money that I want to make.